There was never an us without a
Right,
we want to be parents.
I mean, this is something we both wanted since we were children. Like,
one of our main goals was get married and start a family, and obviously bring them up in the church. That was what we wanted to do with our lives to make a difference. I'd always wanted kids, but unfortunately I had been told from a very young age that I might not be able to have children. It might be a struggle for me. Learned later on that was actually a curse that I really had to get past. We realized we were right for each other because we had the same ideals of what that looked like, and it was all very biblical. So we got married and we decided we were going to try immediately. And I always kind of had in the back of my head, this might be difficult for us, but I had the hope, that we would be able to get pregnant pretty quickly. But because that was in the back of our head, we decided to start our journey a little bit differently. While we were also trying to have a child of our own, we decided that if that was not able to happen, we wanted to foster children. One of the biggest gifts that we thought of as a married couple was that we would give back by helping those children that are in probably the worst periods of their lives and give them a safe and comfortable and loving home. If we couldn't have kids of our own, we were gonna be able to bless children and still be parents. Within that process, my sister actually had a baby, and without getting too much into it, my sister could not take care of her child, and so we immediately opened up our home. We were newlyweds. He was born on Christmas Day 21. We got married on New Year's Day of 22, so he was literally 6 days old. By the time he was 5 months old, May 23rd, 22, we had him full time. A lot of people, I don't think, even realize he's not our child because we treat him just like our child, and his mother is still involved.
we were already having them on and off, so it wasn't like people weren't seeing them.
And from day one, we brought him to church. That was our thing. If he was going to be with us on a Sunday, he was going to come to church and know this church family, and he's been blessed 10 times over for that.
And he's a local celebrity now.
But it was a struggle. You're raising a child that's not yours. So we just decided that we were going to make sure that we raised him with God, and we raised him with those beliefs, and we just kind of were steadfast in that and felt like as long as we raised him in church and we raised him with the right principles, that he would turn out okay. But still along this whole entire journey, we were trying to get pregnant, and that was something that was really heavy on my heart, and I know because of that it was heavy on yours. I wanted to control what that looked like. I wanted it to happen immediately because I'm not very good with patience. When it didn't happen within the first couple of months, those thoughts came back in my head of what if we can't have a child, and that was devastating. And it wasn't until Freedom Weekend, we already had a good foundation, I feel like, in Christian principles, but there were things that were being spoken to us that really touched us, and we realized we needed to work on. And so we decided to take advantage of freedom counseling that the church gives here for free for its members. Honestly, I think that's what changed our lives.
Having him come in immediately, basically as soon as we got home and settled in, for me personally, I went from not really having a lot of responsibility to now I am married with a house and a car payment and 3 dogs.
A child.
Now just immediately getting a child that, I wasn't planning on the one hand, you want to have a child of your own. On the other hand, you have a child, but you have kind of this almost guilt because yes, this is your child. I have raised him, but you have the other side of that of trying to reunify them. For me, especially, it was really hard because it's one of those things where it's like, I want to help however I can, but I don't know how to do that, and there's really nothing I can do with that. And it kind of makes you feel a little bit powerless because there's nothing I can do there. And that's where we really had to lean in on our faith.
So you go through individual counseling for yourself, and you have to work on yourself, which there was a lot to do, I think, for both of us that we didn't even really acknowledge.
There's a lot of things that were opened up to both of us that we weren't really aware of.
One of which I had to realize that I was speaking a curse over my life, that I had been told at a young age from a nurse and a provider that I was probably going to have trouble having children later on because I had cysts as a 15, 16-year-old. That was always in the back of my head, and I would tell people that. I would be like, well, it might be difficult for us to have children because of X, Y, and Z, and that really wasn't living in what the Lord says he had for his plan for us. It was trusting in somebody else's plan for my life that wasn't necessarily truth.
Who's never really been a part of your life since.
Right.
One of the hardest things for me too was having to deal with a lot of what she was dealing with. There was many conversations that went somewhere along the lines, well, what if I can't have children? And on the one hand, there's always the reassurance of that's not why I married you anyways. Yes, we both want that, but that's not why we are together. But then on the other hand, it's like, I can say that and mean it, but that doesn't necessarily make it any better. Even if it reassures her about my feelings, it doesn't reassure her about whether or not, we can actually go through with this or not.
We went through the freedom counseling. I realized a couple things about myself. I wasn't reading the Bible every day. We weren't tithing. We weren't doing things that really any Christian, any member of the church should be doing biblically. And so we kind of got right with that. We didn't really have any issues with our marriage. We were very much newlyweds and still in the cupcake phase, but we still took the opportunity to do marriage counseling and learned a lot about each other. And I started back reading the Bible over again, a 365 plan. I just remember reading through Genesis again, and it's something that was kind of like, oh man, I have to go back through Genesis again. But for the first time in my life, the circumstances I was in, the Bible was speaking to me. Genesis was speaking to me because there were so many women that were dealing with infertility issues in Genesis. I just realized like the pattern was their faithfulness in God, and really allowing his timing to be his timing was the important piece in there, and then they were blessed. I came to basically a fork in the road. We're almost 2 months away from being deemed infertile. You have to wait a year. And so we were either going to go forward with treatments and infertility treatments because it's something we really wanted to do, was still have a child, or we were not. And for me, I just remember, praying, reading my Bible, and God really spoke to me one day, and it wasn't like an audible voice, but I just knew things that I hadn't previously known. And I just felt led that I needed to just trust in God. I just needed to let go of the things that I was controlling or trying to have my own timing for, and listen that God had a path in my life, and he had a plan for me, and that he loved me and was going to give me those things. And so I came to the decision. I remember telling Alex, I'm not going to go forward with any infertility treatments at this time. I don't think that's what I'm supposed to be learning right now in my life. I think I'm supposed to be learning to be faithful and to believe in what God says and what his plan is for me. It was a huge relief off my shoulders. Like, I just felt like, okay, I'm just going to allow him to lead me, and whatever happens, happens, and we're going to be parents somehow, but it's not going to be my plan anymore. It's going to be his. And I kid you not, less than a month later, because you go through all the testing and everything each month, my next testing that I took, a pregnancy test, I was pregnant. And it was just like a confirmation that I needed, that you just sometimes have to listen. Sometimes you just have to let go. All of these things were leading up to us being able to forgive and forget some of our past, and then just be faithful with God. And then he blessed us.
Yeah, and that's a funny story too, because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. We're both getting ready. I'm in the kitchen trying to clean dishes or something. And then she just starts screaming my name, and I'm like, there's something wrong. So I come sprinting in the bathroom, and she's like, look! And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, I am the happiest I've ever been, but also like,
don't do that again. Don't scare me like that.
I think you're dying or something, and then it's this. Like, it doesn't matter what you've dealt with, what you've been through. Honestly, it doesn't even matter what you're really dealing with right now. We still have our vices, we still have our struggles, but at the end of the day, it's about knowing who you are, knowing what you believe, and then actually leaning into that, because I feel like that's something a lot of people have a struggle with is, yeah, I know this, I believe this, I've lived with this my entire life, but then actually leaning into it when the time comes. I have lived my life as a backseat Christian for a long time, and it has taken, honestly, just coming here and realizing the changes I need to make in my life.
Don't be afraid to get back to the basics. We all have to have a strong foundation in order to grow in our Christianity. Definitely take advantage of what Valley has to offer. I think it's taboo to say that you've been to counseling, but I think that was one of the best things that we could have done, and it really blessed us tenfold. At the end of the day, it's about having faithfulness and making sure that you address the things that were not necessarily true, but that you were speaking into your life and that's not what God says. You really just have to sit back and let that go and realize that that's really because of fear, and God isn't about fear, God's about love. His plan for your life is what's going to happen. It just might not happen in your own timing.